Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Faisel Syed,
And I'm Dr. Dan McCarter.
and you're listening to Faisel Friends, where we believe access to primary care is a right, not a privilege.
Today, Faisal and I are talking about personalizing the art of medicine. Let's dive right in.
Hey there, Dr. Dan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Faisal. How about you?
I've been better.
Yeah, that's what I understand. We decided earlier we were going to talk about the art of medicine, and it sounds like you've gotten to experience the other side of medicine. So
That's
that
right.
that might be an interesting jumping off point for today.
Yeah, so I had my physical this week. It took 4 months to get in. That was the soonest appointment. So my wife scheduled it back in February. Had my physical done this week. And literally the day after my physical last night, I find myself in the emergency room with excruciating pain on the side of my head, around my ear, going into my jaw, and I lost my hearing, sense of hearing on that side of the ear, and it just makes me wonder about how have we gotten to this point in medicine where historically, before any issue like that even happens, early on, you reach out to your primary care doctor, of course. It just kind of goes without saying. But if the practice of medicine now is so defined, each interaction and each encounter is so defined, like, well, this is a new patient wellness visit, not a sick visit. So we're going to do your physical today. And if you don't feel better, you can call me back and we can come back in anytime. You know what I'm saying? How did we get to this point that, or let's say if I haven't shown up for a physical for a couple of years, and then I go to the doctor because I'm forced to for whatever reason. Why could that visit also not be viewed as a wellness visit as well?
Right. And I think our pediatric colleagues that they get that they never give up a opportunity to do an immunization. If no matter what the reason the child's there, if they're due for an immunization, they'll bend over backwards to do it. But you bring up a good point. I think, don't you think part of it has been that the powers that be that are running the schedules uh, want the schedules to be absolutely jam packed and want everybody to run on time, and then it's all about setting the agenda for the visit and not allowing other things to creep in. But yet I think all of us, my mentor Lewis Barnett would talk about the by the way. He
Uh,
would say that was generally the most important thing of the visit. Was you were getting ready to leave the room and the patient would say, "By the way, doc," and because if I'm not mistaken, you're while your ear really sort of got really bad yesterday, you were having a few ear symptoms when you went to the doctor, and
yeah,
they didn't have time to talk about that.
yeah. The focus of the visit was more the wellness visit. Let's get your fasting blood work done. Let's focus on your wellness for today, not the other issue. And that's what we see actually happening even on the other side. Besides being focused, okay, this is a wellness visit, this is a sick visit. But even you're seeing that in residency programs where there's so much emphasis with practicing these or learning these evidence-based medical guidelines. But what about using evidence-based communication strategies? Just focusing on these medical guidelines alone, that's not the practice of medicine. I mean, you got to know it like the back of your hand, but you can't squeeze in every patient into an algorithm.
Right. Well, and honestly, there are lots of very good randomized controlled trials out there. I've never personally been part of one of those randomized controlled trials. So if a doctor is talking to me about the randomized controlled trial, I've got to decide how closely does that apply to me?
That's right.
And I mean, I think I don't know that every patient thinks about it that way, but they're more concerned about themselves than they are about all the people in the trials.
Absolutely. They want to know, hey, what will be the best outcome for me given all of my life situation? What you're talking about with everyone else, that's everything else. And so we need a cultural shift with how we approach health in general. I believe I believe that the system has become so focused on the definition of the visit, the chief complaint of the visit, that the relationship, because we're not saying it should be fully driven by the doctor or it should be fully driven by the patient. The goal is for both the doctor and the patient to come together and decide mutually, hey, this is the best outcome that will make the most sense.
Right. And very often, I mean, I've heard it said that the the sign of a good question is that the person asking the question and the person being asked the question, neither one of them knows the answer before the question is asked. They both learned something from that. And so asking somebody to set the agenda before the meeting just and we're not going to vary from that. It's so restrictive. It doesn't really allow those discoveries to occur person to person, right? I mean, that's so much of what the doctor patient relationship is you're working together to discover what's going on in the patient's life.
Yeah, it's like the caring for patients, the caring part of looking after the patient, the caring part of health care gets lost in all these details.
Right.
The giving. I mean, we want, of course, the doctors and nurses must have time to be able to properly interact with the patients, but the patients also need time too.
Right.
You know, and they need to feel like they're being cared. More along those lines with that feeling of caring. It doesn't necessarily even have to come from the doctor alone. I had a call this morning actually from my mother who had just come. She's one of our Gen Med patients, and she had just left from the doctor's office, and she called me with tears of joy. She called me with tears of joy because she had some concerns over the last couple days, some chest pains, just random aches that she thought that really scared her. She didn't know what to make of it. She felt unsure. She felt fear. She was scared, and she was also she didn't know who to talk to about that, even amongst us, friends and family. But the way that she was received at the center by the front desk staff, by the clinical support staff, by the doctor, she left with tears of joy, feeling heard. She felt cared for. She felt that she was genuinely being looked after. Her concerns weren't blown off. Oh, hey, that's nothing. That's a whole lot of nothing. Don't worry about that. Being dismissed. They listened to her. They took time with her. She did not feel rushed at all. And you know what she told me? She's lived in America most of her life. And she said, I never knew that there could be a clinical experience like this in the United States.
Yeah. Well, and don't you think part of it is because of the fully capitated model, nobody was concerned about getting the copay or getting a payment. It wasn't that wasn't the first thing was to get the insurance card, get the credit card. How are you going to pay for this? Every time I go to see a provider, whether it's a dentist or get my eyes examined or whatever, it seems like that's the first thing that anybody talks about is how are you going to pay for this today? And that is not a topic of conversation that comes up in the capitated model because we know they're our patients. We're getting paid for it in a global arrangement. So when they come in, it's not about how are they going to pay for it. It's about what's going on and what can we do to help them. Um, so anyway, I think it's neat that your mom has that available because I'm sure she doesn't want to worry you. She doesn't want to worry your dad, and but she has her own concerns, and to have somebody to talk to makes a huge difference for her.